Hello everyone, my name is Seth, and today I'm going to give you my review of Dune. So I kind of have an interesting history with Dune. I missed it when I first came out in 2021, and it took me a bit to give it a watch. And then when I did give it a watch, I just got through half of it, and I kind of fell asleep a little bit. I really wasn't into it. And that was about like a year ago, maybe a little bit more than a year ago. And with Dune Part 2 coming out soon, I wanted to go back and give this another shot because everybody's talking about how good the first one was. It won Oscars. It was nominated for a ton of Oscars. And so I'm thinking, well, maybe it was just me. So I gave it another shot, and I'm glad that I did. But before I go any farther, go ahead and like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. So I don't really know what was wrong with me in my first watch of Dune because I really enjoyed it this go around. I guess maybe I wasn't necessarily in the mood to watch it the first time I did. Maybe I just kind of like forced myself to watch it. I honestly don't even remember, but I am so glad that I went back and watched it because this time it had my complete attention. I really enjoyed it this time around. I wouldn't necessarily call it a masterpiece like I know some people probably would, but I do really enjoy it. The one thing that stands out to me here just first is that this film is incredibly ambitious. There's so much world building here that they have to accomplish, and they have to accommodate people like me who know nothing about Dune, never read the books, nothing. I think it could have been very easy to bore the audience with a bunch of exposition dumps, or maybe even throw too much information at the audience too quickly. But I feel like they do a really good job with that balance. Of course, there's a little bit of exposition here and there throughout the film. You kind of have to do that to really get a sense of what's going on between these two families, the different planets, the Emperor, everything like that. There is a lot here to understand. This is a lot of a movie. There's a lot of backstory, and I'm sure there's a ton of little details that if I had known the books more, maybe I would have appreciated a little bit more. But I will say that almost all of your questions that are brought up are answered in one way or another. And even if they aren't answered, I have a feeling that they will be answered come Dune Part 2. So I think after seeing this film, I have a decent grasp on what this world, what this universe is like. Another thing that really stands out to me in this film pertaining to the world building is that the sets and the costume design do a lot of heavy lifting here as well. It stands out to me because this has a really unique look. And I feel like in 2021 at the time, 2024 now, I feel like that's difficult to accomplish with all of the other like great sci-fi that we've had over the last however many years. You know, like Star Wars has a very particular look to it. Star Trek has a very particular look to it. Alien, the same thing there. And I think Dune does a very good job of being specifically Dune. Like you look at this film, you look at the sets, you look at the costume design and the ship design and things like that, and you immediately know that it's Dune. And speaking of the look of this film, I think the cinematography here is incredible. The cinematography is one of my favorite things about this movie, and Denis Villeneuve, the director of this, he did such a good job with this film. I really love Arrival, which is one of his films he did in 2016, and he did a lot of things there that I can see that he kind of applied to Dune and kind of took it to the next level. There were so many beautiful shots in this film, and this just seems like a film where just about any shot you take, you pause the movie, any frame can be a phone or a computer wallpaper background. I think the scale in this film is very impressive too. You can have these very small, intimate moments with some of these characters, but then you also see some of these ships and like the sandworms and things like that that really just shows how big this universe is and how tiny our characters can feel. There were plenty of shots in this film that just made me say, wow. I mean, honestly, they made a bunch of sand very visually interesting, and that's a difficult task to do, but they did it. Quite honestly, I wish I could have seen this on a huge IMAX screen. I feel like I'm missing out, and I know they were doing some re-releases. I didn't get a chance to go out and watch those, but again, I wish I did. I bet seeing some of these shots on the big screen is absolutely breathtaking and it's an experience. And that's what you want from a film of this size and scope. Another thing that stood out to me is that the use of color was very well done. You have a lot of the kind of brownish and reddish, orangish, tannish tones through a lot of this film, especially down on Arrakis. But then when you see a little bit of green from a plant or a little bit of red from blood, like that color just pops and it stands out. And seeing that color really makes an impact. The action in this film was really well done. I think all of the big, like giant kind of set piece action sequences were done really well. There was a lot to them. There was a lot going on and it was visually impressive. But I also loved all of the kind of smaller, more intimate, like hand-to-hand combat moments. All of those had a lot of energy to it. Every encounter felt like a life or death situation. Along with the visuals and the action, the CGI here was fantastic. I pretty much never really noticed, nothing ever took me out of the film when there was a CGI shot. And that's exactly what you want from your visual effects. You want them to just seem so natural, so real, so seamless with the rest of your film. And that's what they do here. All of these visual effects just enhance what they shot. The score here was really, really cool. I think it's like instantly iconic. And I think they do a great job of knowing when to lean into that score and knowing when to not have any score at all. Sometimes there's moments where there was no score whatsoever. That was really impactful. And all throughout this film, I think they do a great job of building tension. There's plenty of sequences throughout this film where you're kind of on the edge of your seat. Like you almost catch yourself holding your breath, waiting to see what's happening next. I like all of the performances in this film just across the board. This is an absolutely stacked cast and it lives up to the hype. Like all of these performers are really good. They do such a good job in all of their roles. And even some of these bigger name actors in these smaller roles, it really makes an impact. It kind of just gives these characters more life. I think Timothée Chalamet was a really good choice to lead this story and to lead this franchise. I think he's a very, very good actor. Like I think he's one of the most talented young actors working today. And he does a great job here, both in like the really small kind of intimate moments and also in some of the bigger moments as well. Rebecca Ferguson had another performance that kind of captured my attention in this. She had a wide range of emotions in this film. I think she does such a good job of kind of playing this worried mother, but also this very strong Bene Gesserit. All throughout this film, she gives a really impressive performance. Those two were the two main standouts for me in terms of performances. But like I said, everybody did such a good job. I love Oscar Isaac in anything. Josh Brolin is really cool in this. And I mean, Jason Momoa is always a fun time. Then you have guys like Stellan Skarsgård and David Dastmalchian both doing really great jobs in their little bit of time they have on screen. And Stellan Skarsgård makes for a very, very intimidating villain. Overall, I would say maybe one of the biggest drawbacks for me is kind of the story and the pace. For me, the pace was a little bit too slow. Now, I think that's 100% intentional. I think this is supposed to have a slower pace. Even though it was a slower pace, it kept that pace through the whole film. So it's not like it was kind of jerking you back and forth with the pace. It's just overall, I think it was maybe a little bit too slow for me. I think while the story here is interesting, and I think they're setting up a lot of interesting things that I'm excited to see how it pays off, I think that's the biggest issue with the story for me is the setting things up. This definitely feels like a part one of a story. It definitely feels like it's setting up a bigger and maybe more consequential part of the story. It does leave you with a few questions, but I do think it's maybe a little bit simple and it's a little bit too much focused on a part two. But don't get me wrong, the story that's actually told is very interesting. It's well done. It's just, I can definitely tell there's going to be a part two. I just kind of feel that the script maybe left a little bit to be desired for me. But as a whole, I will say I really enjoyed this film. I'm glad I went back and watched it again before Dune Part 2. I'm glad I actually finished it this time. Like I said, I don't know what was wrong with me that first go around, but I was drawn in. I was definitely captivated by this film this time. All of the filmmaking here was absolutely top notch. The sound design was incredibly good. The visuals were awesome. And I think it definitely deserved some of those Oscar nominations and wins that it got. I think the story might have been a little bit weak. Maybe there's a little bit too much of a focus on kind of getting through this part so we can set up part two. That did not affect performances from any of these actors at all. Everybody was great from top to bottom. This was such an incredibly ambitious film, and the world building throughout this film was incredibly well done. It was expertly well done, I would say. And I am so glad that I gave this a second chance, and now I am so excited for Dune Part 2. I'm going to give Dune a 4 out of 5. But that's it. That's my review of Dune. Have you seen this film? Let me know what you thought in the comments section down below. Did you have an experience like my first time watching it? Or did you absolutely love it and think it's a masterpiece? Again, let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to have a conversation with you about that. Don't forget to like this video, hit subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss a video. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. You can follow me on social media pretty much anywhere at CinemaSeth, and I'll see you next time.